Do you want to know the fastest and most suitable way to figure out your purpose based on the 16 personality types? Then keep watching this video. Hey, welcome back to Type Evolution, where we learn how to evolve through our personality type with the help of understanding and applying personality type theory. So this is a follow-up to a previous video where I talked about my philosophy behind the 16 personalities as the purpose roles. This video is going to be a bit more specific in the way how you can find your personal purpose. Of course, this video is going to be based on my own experience with Type Evolution and what I've seen work for other people. Step number 1, exploration. So the first step is you have to explore to find your purpose. I can say from personal experience, back in the day when I found personality type theory, I'm almost embarrassed to admit it, but I was studying law, and I'm embarrassed to admit it because it obviously does not fit my purpose role at all. There's no way to make it fit because I think INFJ IEI is the psycho-spiritualist, and you might argue with me and say, no, lawyers can be INFJ and IE, blah, blah, but based on my understanding of the 16 personality types and my own experience and what I've seen with other people, I would say that no, being a lawyer is not a suitable career or purpose for the INFJ personality. And you can argue with me about that, but that's just my take on it. I already kind of knew it back then, but I was influenced by other things. What I did whilst I was studying, I was miserable, I was depressed, I was like, oh no, this is horrible, I cannot do this. And I went out with the intention of finding what I should do with my life or what I'm supposed to do. So I had the intent behind it. I probably did not spell it out in my head, but I think it was driving me. I was driven by this thing of I have to find my thing because the law thing is obviously not my thing, so I really have to find it. And this is what led me to, in my case, because I was a very stereotypical introvert in the sense that I was also very much in my own world and a lot online. It was kind of like I was quarantining, even though I wasn't, we didn't have a pandemic, but in my personal free time, I was like a quarantine person. So my exploration was mainly online. And this is why I want to mention it, because this is the sign. You can explore even during a quarantine. You can find your purpose even during a quarantine. This is how I came across personality type theory. I have to say I also came across it when my mother gifted me with a psychology book, and I was browsing through it and I was looking up the things that caught my interest, that were the most interesting to me, and these were personality type theory stuff. So like personality stuff, I looked it up because it was the most interesting to me. So this is where the exploration is. See what catches your interest, what seems most relevant at the moment, and then go into that. So this is the exploration phase, and you might have to literally go outside and go to certain events that might be of interest to you. Many people also find their purpose kind of through friends or other people that bring stuff to them, or just going online and just looking for things that catch your interest. So you really have to go through this exploration phase, but with the intent. This is important. I think this is actually the core of manifesting what you want or attracting, the law of attraction. It's having an intent, and your intent has to be clear and has to be solid, and the intent has to be to find what you're supposed to do, to find your purpose. So with that intent in mind, you do the exploration, and also with the intent of finding something that can improve your life and improve the world, okay? So this is really important. This is the exploration phase. Number 2, you are open to finding whatever it is. So I discuss this a lot in my coaching sessions. Many people have limiting beliefs around what they are supposed to do based on the people in their circle, or, you know, negative people, toxic people, whatever, or people who just don't know better, telling them what they're supposed to do. Okay, so many people have these limiting beliefs that hold them back, and they are often based on also the external world, sometimes the internal world. So they might think, oh, I cannot make money with this, or I cannot do this because it's embarrassing, or all these limiting beliefs are going to hold you back, and you have to get rid of those. So this is where a coaching session with me can come in. But overall, you have to be open to finding whatever it is. You really have to open your mind for this. You have to open your heart. You have to be fine with it, no matter what it looks like, no matter what it is. You have to just be accepting that your purpose or what you're supposed to do might have to be something you never expected, or something that other people in your life don't like. So they might even tell you you can never do anything with it, you will never make money with it. So in my case, I had this a lot, where people in my family kept telling me, this is laughable, this is just, basically tell me that it's bullshit, or that it's just useless what I'm doing. I have to admit, I kind of also in the beginning stages hid it from them, so I kind of kept it private. I think this is also related to my personality, but to my introverted and 5-ish inclinations. But I basically just, in the beginning stages, I just hid Typevolution because I knew that some people in my life would be against it, and honestly, back then I was not strong enough to deal with that. So if that's you, if you can relate to this, it's okay. It's okay to not talk with them about it, if that makes it easier for you to go for who you really are and what you're really meant to do. Yeah, so it's also really important to accept yourself here, and I also talked about this in another video about personality growth, to really accept yourself and accept what your interests are, and even if it's something that many people don't find cool, or that they will talk badly about. So could also be things like, I don't know, being a YouTuber, right? Whatever it is, there's always going to be people who are against it. So allow yourself to go with your interests, even if it seems kind of lame or whatever it is. It's best to follow that anyway. So the third step is filtering. So you will have to filter your interests and what you find during your exploration. If you just follow everything, you're going to lose a lot of time, a lot of energy, and it's going to be a bit overwhelming, probably a bit confusing, and you might not really find anything in particular at the end of the day. So it's important that you start filtering your interests. So there's different ways how you can filter them. One obvious filter is, as I said, the purpose role or the personality type. At the moment, I have 8 purpose roles on my blog. You can find it under typevolution.com, and when you go to TBT, Typevolution Types, and you click on the different descriptions of the types, and the titles for each type are the purpose roles. And when you read the description, you're going to see and be able to read the purpose role description. It's very short, but it's going to give you some inspiration and framework. So, like I said earlier in my example, back then, I just should have not gone for the law thing, obviously. But as I said, back then I was not strong enough I was just not strong enough to withstand the pressures of my family, to be honest. Like I had a lot of pressure from them. So this is why I did go with the law thing. But now, if I had been alive, how I am right now back then, I would have told myself, you are a psychospiritualist, and this is just not a good combination. It just doesn't work. Psychospiritualist and law is just way too different. It cannot really be reconciled. It's just not your purpose. It's just not your thing. So just don't even start studying it. It's just useless. Of course, it still helped me, right, in other ways, but at the end of the day, it was still rather useless. So this is the first thing you can do. You can look at your purpose role, but you have to be really sure about your purpose role, and it has to be really accurate. And for that, I would probably advise you to get typed by me, because the purpose roles are based on my understanding and interpretation of the 16 personality types, and there are so many different out there. If you really go along with my understanding of it, I think it's best if you get typed by me in a session, or if you really figure out your type based on my content, based on my blog articles. If you really want to follow your purpose in that way, I would advise you to mostly follow my stuff. Of course, there's also other people who have their own stuff, but their stuff might not fit into the purpose rules that I have found. There's also other people who have a good take on the personality type, so that's fair, okay? But yeah, if it's really obvious like that, where it just doesn't fit at all, then that's the first filter. But I should also note at this point that even though on the surface it might not fit, you can make it fit. So let's say writer. Being a writer is usually recommended for introverts, but other types can also be writers, and it depends on what they write about and how they write about it, and you can combine that with your purpose role. So writer is just a bit too general, and if you combine it with your purpose role, you could still be a writer, but you just have to adjust it to your personality type.
If you fully accept and embrace who you are and don't try to be someone you aren't, then this awareness can be enough and you won't need to consciously filter as much, because then you'll naturally gravitate towards what suits you and your personality. But if you struggle with this, it's best to figure out your purpose role and get typed.
And the other filter is very clearly strengths. If you follow an interest that you're really passionate about, but you are not that good at it, it's just going to be a hobby. It's not going to be that valuable to yourself or other people on a more significant level, okay? So how do you figure out if you're strong at that or not? Testing your ability. I was online, I was engaging in groups and forums and all kinds of things online, and I noticed my ability in the sense that I was learning the theory relatively quickly and relatively well, to the point where I could give advice to people. Also, they paid me for it. So this is how I could see that I had the ability, that I was good at it. This is a really simple way how I could see it. So in this phase, I think it's best if you do not isolate yourself, because if you isolate yourself in this area, then you might falsely assume that you're good at something even if you're not, just because you like it. So please, in this area, it's really important that you check in with other people. I'm not really a fan of comparing yourself to other people, but you can compare yourself in the sense that, okay, how quickly do I learn this compared to other people? How good do I learn this in this amount of time compared to other people? So one example is, for example, you are a beginner in a certain class, let's say a martial arts class. And everyone is a beginner in this class, but you notice that you learn things quicker than the others and you do it better than the others as well. So it tends to be a mix of both how fast you are, but also especially how good you are at it compared to the others. And then it gets to the point where you're so good so quickly that you can teach others in the class how to do certain moves. So you find yourself being like, oh, okay, I can help you out with this, I can help you out with that. And if you have a good teacher, the teacher is also going to point it out to you and say, oh, you're really good at this. Do you want to go further with this, right? So this is a sign that you're good at something. And yeah, so this is where you will have to interact with your environment or with people in some way to test out your ability.
You can start with self-mastery before helping others. After you've seen positive results in your own personal life, as in you basically could help yourself. I did that too. First, I grew my understanding and made significant self-improvements, then I brought that to others. Also, see if there's something exceptional about your approach. That can be visible in the beginning stages.
Okay, I can also give another example in this area. My sister, I would say, is an ESFP, a performer purpose role. And what happened with her is in the exploration phase, one time she visited a certain event, and in that event they showcased instruments. And she was able to try out all the different instruments there. And she was really young and she couldn't really play any instruments at that point. But she had a particular liking for one specific instrument, which was the bassoon. And back then, my mother asked me even, So this is, I guess, the first time I kind of coached someone in terms of purpose. My mother asked me, should I let your sister... Okay, it's a bit odd to be asked this by your mother, right? But this is kind of what our interaction was. So she asked me, do you think I should let her pick the bassoon or rather the violin? This is what I almost get chills. So this is also what I mentioned in the second step of being open to anything, even if it's odd, even if other people might not do the same. If my mother and my sister hadn't been open-minded, they would have picked the violin for her, even though she didn't really care that much about the violin, but just because it was more acceptable or more of the common route that people took. But I said she should pick what she wants to pick, right? She should pick the thing that she's more interested in. And it was clearly the bassoon, so she should pick that, even though it's weird and whatever, even though most people don't play it or learn it. And I'm really, really, really glad that my mother listened to me, because then she was like, okay, you're right, let your sister do the bassoon, let her learn it. So my sister learned it, and this is where we come into the next step of filtering. I guess she didn't really have to do the filtering, because I mean, I think I already knew maybe back then that she was an ESFP, but I didn't know it was her performer purpose role. But performer and obviously performing with a music instrument is really close together, so that was already good. And then of course testing your ability, your strength. So that got tested. My sister took bassoon lessons, and her teachers noticed very quickly that she learned it really quickly. So at her young age, she was already able to play certain pieces that other people wouldn't be able to play if they were just average or less than average. So she was already above average. Now she has been I think she has won certain prizes. She has been playing in different cities and things like that. So, and she's also now going to a music school. And yeah, so it all went really, really well in this area. So I think this is a really clear sign that someone is following their purpose. And I'm really, really glad that she went with this, that she was open-minded and picked the right thing, right? But yeah, I'm also kind of proud that I had a bit of a say in it. And yeah, so then the next step is, okay, so figure out, okay, you're testing your ability. Now you have to kind of gauge, yeah, how good it is, right? So do you make certain successes? Do you have more successes than failures? How good do you feel when you're doing it? Do you enjoy the process, or is it rather emotionally draining? So you kind of have to figure this out, and you will have to take some time for this whilst you are learning it. So whilst you are honing your craft or your skill in this area, you will see how it's going, right? So you will see how good you are at it. And I mean, in this area, there will come a point when you will have to make an assessment and see, okay, did I do good at this overall, or rather bad at rather overall? So the thing is, it's true that there will be a lot of failures even if you do something well. So in the case of my sister, for example, of course there were times when she didn't get a good grade in relation to her playing a certain instrument, or she didn't win a certain prize, or she kind of had a bad performance one time when she was in a bad mood or whatever. So there's still gonna be a few hiccups here and there, a few moments when it's a bit of a failure, so to speak. But the overall theme is still that your successes or the positive still outweighs the negative. And yeah, and also I find it crucial that you do not feel emotionally drained by the process itself. Now, of course, even for me with type evolution, there are times when, okay, I'm just tired now, or I don't know, I have to take a break or whatever. Or also for me, there are moments when I'm not really that sure about typing someone. That can happen. But overall, dealing with type evolution never emotionally drained me. Like this psychological, emotional draining where you're like dreading it. I never had that ever. And I don't think my sister ever had that with her instrument either. So you really should take note of that. So an overall type evolution is doing well, even though I might not make as much money yet, or I'm not as far yet. But this is just certain stages you go through. Overall, it's still rather positive. So this is what you can look at. And if it's the opposite, if you have to admit to yourself, okay, overall, I'm doing mostly failures and mistakes, and it's just getting emotionally draining and something is going wrong overall, like the bottom line is I have more negative stuff than positive with this. It's either that you haven't found a good teacher yet, you know, like you might have to change your approach a little bit, or it's really not your thing, it's just a hobby and you have to go back to the exploration stage and go back to figuring it all out and exploring. So yeah, this is really it. That's how you find your purpose. And then it's just a matter of either tweaking a few things here and there, overcoming certain obstacles, or going back to the first stage of exploration and letting yourself see what it could be. Okay, that's it. So if you like this video, please share, like, subscribe, and I see you in the next one. Bye!